Welcome to HD Rare Coins, your ultimate source for rare coins, fascinating history, and the thrill of discovery. From legendary pennies to hidden gems, we explore the world of numismatics one amazing coin at a time. The year was 1948. The world was still healing, its cities rebuilding, its families reconnecting after the storm of war that had swept across continents. In the United States, optimism was cautious but growing. Factories once used for tanks now produced cars. Families returned to dinners around radios. The American dream, though fragile, was beginning to hum again. And amid the hum of industry, in the heart of the Philadelphia Mint, a modest yet powerful object was being struck, one that would be tucked away into pockets, passed hand to hand, and eventually, silently slip into history. The 1948 Lincoln wheat penny. On its surface, it was ordinary. Coppery brown. 1 cent, barely enough to buy a piece of gum even back then. But this wasn't just a coin. It was a time capsule. A whisper from the past, bearing the face of a president whose legacy had become a kind of national conscience. Abraham Lincoln, still solemn in profile, still bearing the weight of a divided nation, even decades after the Civil War. His likeness had first graced the cent in 1909, marking the centennial of his birth. By 1948, his image had become iconic. Collectors didn't know it yet, but this particular year's penny would become one of the quiet legends of mid-century American numismatics, not because it was silver, not because it was minted in tiny numbers, but because it was a perfect storm of history, scarcity, and subtle beauty. Each coin, minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, told its own story. The Philadelphia coin bore no mintmark, just Lincoln, the date, and those familiar inscriptions: "In God We Trust," arcing above his head, "Liberty," to his left, and the year, 1948, to his right. It was simple. Elegant. But under magnification, under scrutiny, the artistry came alive. The flow of the metal around Lincoln's cheek. The tiny serifs on each numeral. The slightly different die characteristics that made one coin slightly crisper, slightly richer in detail than the next. And to collectors who had the patience to look closely, that's where the magic began. The reverse told a different story. 2 wheat stalks, symbols of agriculture, growth, and national prosperity, curved protectively around the bold words, 1 cent. Above that, United States of America. And just above that, the philosophical banner that tied it all together, E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. The 1948 penny had no new design. No commemorative twist. It wasn't born of novelty, but necessity. Millions were struck, over 317 million in Philadelphia alone. More than 172 million in Denver. About 81 million in San Francisco. On paper, it seemed anything but rare. But as years passed, something happened that no one could predict. Those once plentiful coins began to vanish. Some were lost to time. Others were melted down, damaged, corroded by humidity, or destroyed in house fires, floods, and forgetfulness. Many entered circulation, lived hard lives, and ended up worn slick, stripped of details, thrown into penny jars that would never be reopened. But a few, just a few, were saved. Perhaps they were pulled from circulation by young hands, placed in cardboard albums passed down from father to son, mother to daughter. Perhaps they were stored away in rolls marked, 1948, "Don't touch," by a watchful grandfather who believed coins were more than money. Or maybe they sat in bank vaults, untouched for decades, their luster quietly preserved. These were the survivors. The coins that now bring collectors to their knees, not for what they cost, but for how hard they are to find in perfect condition. Minting in 1948 was precise, but not flawless. Dies wore out quickly, especially in Philadelphia where production was intense. Some coins came out softly struck, Lincoln's hair details barely present. On the reverse, the wheat lines could blur, vanish into the field. Those were the common ones, the coins that blend into background noise. But every so often, one would emerge from the presses with clarity that stopped you in your tracks. That's where the hunt begins. Across the country, collectors, veterans and rookies alike, scour rolls, mint sets, estate sales, and flea markets for the elusive MS graded 1948 penny. MS means mint state. No wear. No damage. Straight from the mint, preserved like it was struck yesterday. But finding one is easier said than done. Even coins that appear perfect to the naked eye can reveal scratches, nicks, or soft strikes under magnification. Grading services like PCGS and NGC became the guardians of truth. Submit a penny, and they'd assign it a grade, MS60 through MS70. But only the best, those with sharp details, brilliant luster, and no blemishes, could hope to reach the upper 60s. MS65. Impressive. MS66. Scarce. MS67. A miracle. Only a handful exist in that condition. Each one a certified time traveler from 1948, untouched by the decades, and then, there are the legends. In the Midwest, a man named Harold found a dusty cigar box in his grandfather's attic. Inside were rolls of weak pennies. Most were common, worn, unremarkable. But nestled halfway into the second roll was a 1948 Philadelphia penny so pristine, so brilliantly red, that Harold thought it might be fake. He sent it to PCGS. It came back MS67 RD, the highest grade for that mint and year. That single coin sold at auction for over $5,000. Harold wept. Not for the money, but for the memory. That coin became his grandfather's voice, stories like his spread in whispers. In online forums. In late-night chats between collectors. The 1948 penny, once so common, was becoming legendary not because of rarity in numbers, but rarity in perfection. Most coins from that year were brown by now, oxidized with age. But the red ones? The true RD grade coins. Those were the unicorns. Preserved in albums, hidden in sealed rolls, glowing like they had just left the press, and that glow. It's called luster. It's not just shine. It's the delicate flow lines on the coin's surface that reflect light in waves. Luster is fragile. It disappears with even the softest touch. Which is why a high-grade, red 1948 penny is so valuable. It survived untouched, but even among those, certain errors and varieties elevate the 1948 cent to a realm few expected. There's talk among specialists of double dies, where a coin's design appears doubled due to die misalignment during production. The doubling is most often found on the date or the inscriptions. One such coin, a 1948 DDO, double die obverse, was spotted in New York in a dealer's junk box. It later sold for over $1,200 once verified. Another error, the BIE variety, a small die break between the letters B and E in Liberty. It's subtle. Tiny. But in the world of error coins, it's gold. Collectors chase these small quirks with religious fervor. Not because the mistakes are big, but because they make each coin unique. Like finding a painting with the artist's fingerprint in the corner, and perhaps most fascinating are the repunched mint marks. Especially in Denver and San Francisco minted coins. The tiny D or S would occasionally be punched more than once, at a slightly different angle. RPMS, repunched mint marks, became a subculture all their own. Books were written. Magnifiers sold. Coin albums designed just to document them. Suddenly, the 1948 penny wasn't just a coin, it was a puzzle. A story in copper. And every collector who held one became part of that story. It wasn't just about value. It was about meaning. The cent was the coin of the people. It paid for candies and newspapers. It jingled in overalls during the harvest. It sat in church offering plates, lined pockets in war movies, and dropped into jukeboxes playing Frank Sinatra. The 1948 penny saw America rise from the ashes of war and step boldly into a new era of peace and prosperity. Holding one in your hand is like holding a single heartbeat of the 20th century, and as time went on, collectors began to realize just how many of these pennies had been lost, not because they were melted or destroyed, but because they were ignored. Dismissed. Forgotten in drawers, in rain-soaked jars buried under sheds, in bank vaults mislabeled and untouched for 50 years, but when found, when a high-grade 1948 penny emerges, it is no longer just a cent. It is a relic. A treasure. A memory. And sometimes, it is a fortune. By the end of the 1940s, the rhythm of minting coins in the United States had become something of a national ritual. Day in and day out, massive blanking presses in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco struck millions of coins with mechanical precision. Each one a spark of copper brilliance, each one a silent witness to America's post-war transformation. Yet even within such routine, nature found ways to intervene. Even within steel and pressure and control, imperfection bloomed. And in those imperfections, collectors would one day find priceless treasure. The 1948 cent was minted in 3 major facilities, each producing a version that was, on the surface, identical. But no collector worth their loop ever trusted the surface alone. Coins are like people, they reveal more when you know where to look. And so, the closer numismatists studied the 1948 issues, the more secrets they unearthed. The Philadelphia Mint, the oldest of them all, struck over 317 million pennies that year. It had no mintmark, just the plain date and Lincoln's silent, unblinking profile. The Philadelphia cents were often taken for granted. No mintmark? Must be common. But seasoned collectors knew better. They understood that the absence of a mark didn't mean the absence of value. Especially not when it came to a coin with full red luster and no signs of wear. The Philadelphia cents, struck in such volume, saw some of the worst die fatigue that year. That meant that coins with sharp, early die-state details were rarer than the number suggested. Most came out mushy. But a few, just a few, were brilliant. Then came the Denver coins. They bore a small D beneath the date, stamped by hand-punched dies, tools prepared by real people, with real human flaws. That meant that sometimes, a mintmark was punched more than once. Or slightly rotated. Or too deep. Or too shallow. Those small mistakes would one day fuel a whole generation of collectors chasing after RPMs, repunched mint marks. One such variety, 1948 D RPM 1, became a legendary find in the late 1990s. The doubling on the D was sharp. Obvious, if you knew how to look. Only a few dozen confirmed examples existed. And each one worth hundreds, sometimes thousands, depending on grade. The mistake had become a masterpiece. San Francisco struck fewer cents, just over 81 million. Coins from that mint bore an S, a letter that instantly sparked joy in the hearts of West Coast collectors. San Francisco cents had their own flavor. Their own subtle characteristics. The copper blend there seemed to age differently. Red stayed redder longer. Strike quality was often better early in the year and degraded rapidly toward the end. That meant coins from early 1948 minting runs in San Francisco became highly desirable, especially in gem uncirculated condition. And just like with Denver, the S mintmark sometimes shifted or doubled, spawning its own treasure hunt for RPM lovers, but it wasn't just about where the coin came from, it was how it had survived. In a coin's life, the journey from mint to market is perilous. Struck, ejected, dropped into bins, bagged, rolled, shipped. In those moments, tiny scratches form. Contact marks. Bag marks. Nicks. Dings. Each one lowers a coin's grade. Each one nudges it further from greatness. That's why collectors hunt so obsessively for coins with clean fields, no marks, no discoloration, no haze. They seek coins with satiny luster, strong strikes, razor-sharp lines in Lincoln's beard, and fully separated wheat grains on the reverse. These are the coins that survive the decades not just intact, but glorious, and surviving isn't just about condition. It's about story. In the dusty backroom of an estate sale in Portland, a young woman found an envelope marked, pennies, 1940s. Inside, neatly wrapped in yellowed wax paper, were 2 rolls of wheat cents. Most were dull. Average. But one gleamed like it had been struck yesterday. A 1948's brilliant red. Virtually flawless. She sent it for grading and waited. When the email finally came, her breath caught. MS67RD. Population, 1 of 3. Value, over $7,000. She never expected it. Neither had her grandfather, who had kept that roll in a coffee can under his sink since Eisenhower was president. Stories like hers ripple across the hobby. They inspire. They tease. And they drive demand through the roof. By the time 2020 rolled around, 1948 cents, especially in Red Mint State, had become hot property. Auctions began showcasing them in primetime slots. Collectors whispered about certain grading serial numbers as if they were championship stats. Did you see the MS67RD from lot number 1183? Yeah, Heritage sold that one for $4,000. Monster, I appeal. And those words, I appeal, were everything. You could have 2 coins of the exact same grade. MS66RD, for instance. But one could sell $4,180, while the other could fetch $600. Why? Because of the way it looked. Luster that danced under light. Color that burned with intensity. Strikes that seemed carved rather than pressed. These weren't just coins, they were artwork. And when collectors fell in love, they paid dearly for that love. As demand grew, fakes began to surface. Some dealers warned of cleaned coins passed off as red. Others noted artificially colored coins made to mimic the real luster. That's when the grading companies, NGC, PCGS, ANAX, became more vital than ever. Their encapsulation of coins, their serial track certifications, became the shield collectors needed against fraud. And for those lucky enough to own the real thing, the slabs weren't just protection, they were proof of glory. Even now, somewhere in the quiet corners of America, another 1948 cent lies waiting. Maybe in an old lunchbox. Maybe behind a desk drawer. Maybe in a plastic bag at the bottom of a sock drawer. A coin no one has touched in 50 years. A coin that, when found, will ignite the same excitement, the same heartbeat-skipping thrill that collectors live for, because collecting isn't just about money. It's about discovery. About holding history in your hand. About finding a whisper of the past and giving it a voice again. The 1948 penny isn't rare because it was made in small numbers. It's rare because time forgot to destroy it. And those that remain, those that shine, have earned every ounce of their legend. And yet, we haven't even reached the best part, because now, in the halls of auctions and the depths of collectors' registries, the very finest examples of the 1948 penny are commanding prices that once seemed impossible. A perfect MS68RD. Virtually priceless. If one were to appear at auction today, bidding would be fierce, fast, and international. Bidders from Dubai, London, New York would watch their screens, fingers hovering over mousepads, chasing history, and as that hammer falls, as the lot is declared sold, you realize that what was once worth just 1 cent, has become a treasure beyond words. The year was 1951. America was riding the edge of 2 worlds, still basking in the post-World War II glow of economic recovery while nervously stepping into the shadows of a new Cold War. Across cities, the air buzzed with innovation, but also tension. Televisions flickered in more homes than ever before. Families gathered around gleaming Buick cars and shiny Formica kitchen tables. Soldiers returned from Korea while children were taught to duck under desks. It was a time of confidence and caution, of stepping forward while looking over one's shoulder. In the heart of Denver, Colorado, where the Rockies stood watch like ancient guardians, the U.S. Mint was busy striking coins that would carry the legacy of a changing nation. Among them, a small, unassuming 1-cent coin was born. It bore the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, etched into American consciousness like the very foundation of freedom. But this wasn't just any penny. This was the 1951 wheat cent, and it would carry a secret value far beyond its face. Millions were struck. In fact, over 625 million pennies rolled off the Denver Mint's presses that year, a staggering number by any measure. That meant the coin was everywhere. In shirt pockets, piggy banks, under sofa cushions, slipped between newspaper pages as exact change. In candy stores, soda counters, and jukeboxes where Frank Sinatra crooned in smooth vinyl whispers. The penny was part of daily life, so common it almost vanished in plain sight, but not every 1951 D was the same. To the casual eye, the design was identical to its Philadelphia and San Francisco siblings. Lincoln's right-facing bust occupied the obverse, strong and dignified, framed above by, "In God We Trust." To his left, the simple word "Liberty." To the right, the date, 1951, and beneath it, a tiny D mintmark that told collectors exactly where this little piece of copper was born. On the reverse, 2 wheat stalks curved along the edges, flanking 1 cent and United States of America. Above it all, the national motto, E pluribus unum. This reverse hadn't changed since 1909 when Victor David Brenner first designed it. And even in 1951, 4 decades later, it still looked timeless, but even in the millions, uniqueness bloomed. You see, in 1951, dies were still hand-prepared and mintmarks were hand-punched. Every mint worker who placed a D into a die with a punch and mallet unknowingly left behind their own unique fingerprint. Some punches were tilted. Some were struck more than once. Occasionally, they were punched in slightly different positions, overlapping, misaligned, doubled. These were the origins of repunched mint marks, RPMs. And the 1951 D is one of the most famous years for RPM varieties. Collectors who specialize in die varieties began finding them. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens. The 1951 D wheat penny now has over 40 known RPM varieties. Some are obvious, the D punched sideways or overlapping dramatically. Others are subtle, barely a shadow, just enough to reward the trained eye and a strong magnifier. These weren't errors, they were whispers of history, and yet, even beyond the RPMs, the 1951 D held more secrets. One of the most iconic varieties in modern penny collecting came from this year, the 1951 D/S over mintmark. A mystery born when a Denver mintmark was punched over a San Francisco one. The theory? A leftover die intended for San Francisco was sent to Denver and repurposed, the D stamped directly over the S. The result? A ghostly S lurked beneath the bold D, visible only to those who knew how to see. Only a handful have ever been found. Each is a marvel. Each is worth hundreds, even thousands, in high grades, but it wasn't just varieties and errors that drew collectors. It was the hunt for perfection. Out of the 625 million pennies struck in Denver that year, how many still remain in perfect, untouched condition? The answer, very, very few. Most entered circulation and lived hard lives. They were tossed in drawers, spent at corner stores, dropped in the street, ground down in vending machines. Even coins that were saved often aged poorly. The copper darkened. Luster faded. Toning crept in. What survived were the rare few that were never touched. Pulled fresh from mint bags. Tucked away in rolls. Stored in cool, dry basements and forgotten, and these, the Mint State 1951 D wheat pennies are what every collector dreams of. A coin in MS-60 is nice. MS-63 is better. But once you reach MS-65, the penny begins to sing. And in MS-66, it becomes a star. Full red luster, unbroken by fingerprints or environmental damage, blazing with the same fire it had the moment it was struck. These coins are so rare that collectors sometimes wait years just to see one come to auction. The top grades. MS-67 and beyond. Legendary. Only a precious few are known. In MS-67 RD, the coin glows. The fields are smooth as glass. The devices, Lincoln's jawline, the wheat stalks, are razor sharp. No spots. No nicks. just perfection. In auctions, these coins can fetch $3,000 to $5,000, sometimes more depending on the population. And the competition for them is fierce, even beyond auctions. Stories unfold that in a small town in Iowa, a retired factory worker named Dale inherited his uncle's coin collection. Most of it was average, circulated wheat cents, nickels, a few silver dimes. But nestled in one roll marked 1951 DUNC was a coin that glowed. He took it to a dealer, who stared at it for almost a full minute. They submitted it to PCGS together. It came back MS67RD, one of the finest known examples. Dale sold it privately for over $4,200. It paid for his granddaughter's first year of college. Elsewhere, in California, a young numismatist named Brielle discovered her own gem at a coin show, buried in a junk box, sold for 25 cents. The dealer hadn't looked closely. Brielle had. Under her loupe, she spotted a slight shift in the D mintmark. She compared it to the known RPM guides and her heart skipped. It was RPM #5, a rare and desirable variety. She had it slabbed, MS64RD. She didn't sell it. She framed it. It was her first real find. The beginning of her journey. These stories repeat across generations. Grandparents passing down rolls. Kids discovering treasure. Hobbyists becoming historians. Because this coin isn't just copper, it's time. It's trust. It's a relic from a year when pennies weren't just thrown into jars but treated with care, sometimes reverence, and still, after all these decades, collectors search. They search not just for grades, but for meaning. They ask questions only coins can answer. Was this penny in a soldier's hand before shipping off to Korea? Was it used to buy a comic book in 1953? Did it help pay for a soda on a hot Texas day in 1960? Did it sit in a wedding gift jar? Or was it hidden, waiting, for someone like you to find it again, because that's the magic? These coins never leave. They just wait to be rediscovered. And as for value, the numbers speak for themselves. A regular circulated 1951 D penny, worth maybe 3 to 10 cents to a dealer. But a certified MS65RD example, that's a $100 $200 coin. MS66RD, over $400 $700. And for those few MS67RD beauties, the price could be thousands. And that's without factoring in the rare RPMs or over mintmarks. Combine both, high grade and rare variety, and you've got something that transcends collecting. You've got something priceless. Not all collectors begin as experts. Some are drawn in by nostalgia, a rusted penny in a jar, a coin they found with their father on a Saturday morning walk. For others, it starts with a single glint of copper in a parking lot, picked up absent-mindedly only to later reveal a faint mintmark and the date, 1951. And in that moment, a quiet question begins to form: could this be the one? The chase begins there. Coin shows, online forums, late nights with coin albums spread out like storybooks of the past. The 1951 D penny becomes not just a collectible but a symbol of perseverance, of possibility. It's one of the few coins with such a large mintage that still manages to maintain mystique. Why? Because true gems are camouflaged in quantity. Because, in this case, the rarest treasures are hiding in plain sight, and the more one learns about the 1951 D, the deeper the rabbit hole goes. Take the planchet quality, for example. In 1951, the mint was still using coin blanks made from a 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc alloy. But that composition wasn't always perfect. Microscopic variations in metal content created different surface characteristics. Some pennies aged into a rich mahogany brown. Others oxidized unevenly. But a tiny fraction retained that deep, blazing red that collectors crave. The kind that reflects light in radiant waves, the kind that instantly elevates a coin's grade. and its desirability, but it wasn't just luster that determined fate. It was the die state. Each die, used thousands of times before being replaced, degraded over time. Early die strikes featured sharp details, Lincoln's hair defined, his jaw chiseled, the wheat lines razor fine. Later die states, however, softened. Surfaces blurred. Tiny cracks began to spider across the metal, sometimes creating die cracks or cuts, raised lumps where metal filled in broken sections of the die. While these imperfections might ruin some coins, they created rarities in others. A strong, late die state with a dramatic die crack. That's a conversation piece. A cut on the rim. A coin with personality. These nuances become obsessions that lie in the depths of a New Jersey basement. A retired railroad worker named Russ documented over 60 rolls of wheat pennies his grandfather had saved in 1951. Every Friday, after dinner, he would examine 10 more coins. He used an old banker's loupe, yellowed with age, and a small gooseneck lamp. Most were dull. But one night, something shifted. A 1951 D struck slightly off-center, with a dramatic die break across Lincoln's shoulder. Russ named it the lightning bolt. He submitted it. It was authenticated. He didn't sell it. He framed it with a note, the one that made me fall in love with coins. That's the thing about the 1951 D. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And only those who listen closely hear the stories that in southern Arizona, a coin club held its annual Wheat Penny Night, where every guest brought their finest Lincoln cent. A teenager named Miguel nervously presented his 1951 D RPM coin, a clear repunching, visible even without magnification. The room of seasoned numismatists fell silent. It was RPM number 9, rarely seen in such crisp condition. That night, Miguel won a scholarship from the club's fund. The penny had paid for his textbooks, and lit a fire that would lead him to a future career in archaeology. The beauty of this coin lies not just in what it is, but in what it represents. A relic of everyday life turned into a legacy. A bridge between generations. A testament to the detail, artistry, and imperfections of mid-century minting. And more than anything, a symbol of what's possible when you look just a little closer. And the market? Oh, the market is a living thing. Each year, a new record seems to emerge. An eBay listing goes viral. A heritage auction sells an MS-67 RD 1951 D for over $5,500 after a bidding war between two collectors who'd been chasing registry points. On forums, members update population reports, watching with anticipation as coins rise through the grading ranks, or disappear into private collections, never to be seen again. And then come the whispers, rumors of an MS-68 RD in a private hoard. Unconfirmed. Unslabbed. A unicorn among coppers. A coin that, if real, could command $15,000 or more at auction. No proof yet. But the possibility? Enough to fuel 1,000 new searches, because that's the magic of the 1951 D. It lives in between moments. Between what's known and what's possible. Between a casual glance and a collector's gaze, and as you hold one in your hand, you start to wonder, what journey has this penny taken? Whose life did it touch? Did it buy a bus ticket for a returning soldier? A ring pop for a giggling child? Did it fall between the floorboards of a 1954 diner booth, only to be rediscovered decades later in a remodel? Or maybe, just maybe, it sat, untouched, perfectly preserved, waiting for you, because one day, in a coin show hall lit with humming fluorescent lights, or in a dusty attic shoebox, or inside an unmarked roll at a local auction, it will happen. You'll spot a penny, coppery, simple, quiet. You'll pick it up. You'll notice the 1951 date. The tiny D. And something will feel different. You'll angle it toward the light. The red glow will bounce back at you, sharp and flawless. You'll bring it close, and you'll see it, a doubled mintmark. Or a struck-through thread. Or an unreported die gouge, and in that moment, the world will fall away, because now, it's not just a penny. It's a story. Your story, and soon, your voice will join the thousands before you, adding another thread to the vast, ever-growing tapestry of collectors who know the truth, that the smallest coin can carry the greatest weight, that the 1951 wheat penny is more than just metal. It's memory. It's mystery. It's history. And for those who dare to search, for those patient enough to listen, it's magic.